Hi, welcome to the next episode of Triggers in Spiritual Medicine. My name is Laura Joseph, and I am your hostess with the mostess. In this podcast, we have Nancy Smith, who's going to be talking to us about mediumship and the Akashic Records. But the podcast in general, we typically address the intersectionality of all the things that typically make us sick and a lot of things that typically we forget that trigger the heck out of us. And how do we find the intersectionality and heal those parts of ourselves so we can navigate the world in a much more effective manner and in a more healthy manner? So, welcome, Nancy. So, for those who don't even know what Akashic Records, let's just start off with like, what are the Akashic Records for those who like, what the heck is that?
Okay. So Nancy Smith here with and I do have some stuff on my website about at ageescapes.net about Records, but the short version is the Akashic realm is really the realm of source of God. It's the energy where all things are created from, where they come from. And this Akashic energy is an old Sanskrit word. Um, so we could use a lot of English words here to replace that, but Akasha really embraces the idea that this is an indelible energy that is from source, that is from the highest power. And within that energy, the records, everything that's been created since the creator started creating, there is a record of it within the Akashic realm. And we have access to it depending on how we go about it and what questions we ask and where and what we're ready to hear. So basically the Akashic Records personally is the journey of your soul through space and time, what your soul wants to create, what your soul wants to experience, and all the lifetimes your soul has ever experienced. And since the beginning of time as well, our souls are very old. And I see our souls as we're our spirit comes from our soul, our individuality comes from our soul. They say that you've ever heard the word oversoul. Our soul is connected to us, has created us. Our spirit and our essence of who we are is connected to our soul, and our soul's in the Akashic realm. It's in with the creator, kind of like nesting dolls. We're the little tiny nesting dolls, the big nesting doll.
Well, that's actually a good analogy, the nesting dolls, right? Um, so how did you get into wanting to learn about like what kind of like what was like the trigger or what was the thing that basically was like, I need to learn this and I need to share it with others. Not only do I need to share it with others, but I need to write a book about it.
I know. Well, here's the thing. When I was a kid, a little kid, I was one of those sensitive, hypersensitive, highly sensitive people, HSP, they call them nowadays, where I just felt and heard things that was a little bit beyond what people are actually saying. When somebody was saying something, I could feel the words, or sometimes there would be another voice behind them saying, here's, and I said, who is that talking? Because two voices would always come at me. And it was the voice of their soul or the voice of their guardian angel, their guidance. And when I was raised Catholic, we get dragged to church every Sunday, maybe more. And the the energy of the prayers and the ringing of the bells, I felt that more than I knew what it was. And I felt, and then I would be taught this is this and this means that. And there was something so much more beyond it. So that was really interesting. Then I grew up, got mature, forgot about all that stuff. And then it came back when I started having kids. And I needed to understand the media. I never even knew about mediumship, to be honest with you. And a mediumship hit. And I had to have somebody explain to me what mediumship was. How am I talking to these people? I've always talked to spirit. I've always talked to my grandmother. I always talked to and felt them, but I didn't have a word for it. And so as I studied mediumship, there was something more that was behind what I was being taught in the spiritualist community is where I was taught and learned. And I'm not saying anything to negate what I was taught. I just knew there was more. And
Yeah.
there was that soul connection, and the message of the spiritual of the mediumship work is the most important part to me. The feeling of it. And so I started to search for more things. I did some shamanic journeys, some shamanic studying, and I did energy studying. And then I came into the Akashic Records with Edgar Casey, and there was another discipline that was following. I learned from Christina Cross, and she introduced me to the Akashic Records and the Akashic Realm. And I'm like, oh my God, that's what I've been seeing all this time. It made so much sense. It pulled everything together. It's the journey of your soul. So I jumped into it and I tied, well, I didn't even have to tie them. They all tied together: the shamanic work, the energy work, the mediumship work. It was all under the umbrella of Kasha, which is God, and God's presence and in his divine, I want to say the energy of source and their divine unconditional love. We're created from love. We're going back to love. And when we're not in love, we're forgetting who we are. And my work has always been around, how do you remember who you are? How do I help people remember who they are? And how do we live this soul-filled journey that we're invited to, since we were born, we were invited to do. So that's kind of how I had to pull it all together, because
So, as somebody who I consider myself a Reformed Catholic, although I grew up with dual religious households, so I grew up with the Russian Orthodox, which is the Eastern Catholicism, and but I also went to 10 years at Catholic school, and I know from just what I felt growing up, there was like this taboo that if you could see or speak to spirits, like there was something wrong with you, right? And so I know for me, I look back in my journey, like if I wasn't so afraid and I embraced that, even though I came from multi lineage. I mean, my dad used it in medicine. His mother was a very gifted tea leaf reader, and his sister was also very gifted. So I remember watching my father diagnose cancer in patients when the tests were negative, and he was right and the tests were wrong because he listened to his intuition.
oh,
But I remember running away from it and feeling like, well, this is wrong or this is bad because of what and how I was raised in the Catholic Church.
oh,
So, and I question, like, would I have married even my abuser if I didn't have that fear? And I actually embraced the gift with spirit, because spirit actually told me not to marry my ex, to the point of taking my voice away. So I'm curious to know, like, how you journeyed that, that duality of what we're taught, and this is like with a lot of religions. It's not just Catholicism, but the Catholicism is like our experience, right? So it's like, how do you embrace that?
okay.
Also understanding what maybe you have been taught growing up.
Well, I tell you, it's not easy. There was a lot of work that I did. I have to say, point out how Don Miguel Ruiz, who wrote the Four Agreements and then later the Fifth Agreement, they talk about us being socialized. And they talk to us a lot about being, we're taught when we look at a tree, we're taught what that tree is, and we're given the word tree, but we really don't know the tree because it's superficial. Because I heard other things and I felt them and I also experienced them in my life, I started to block out. And the reason I could block things out, because my mom was struggling in her life. I was the oldest of 9 kids. And my dad was kind of checked out. And so I didn't get a lot of nurturing and caring from my parents. I was more their helper to take care of the 9 kids. And I had to learn to do things on my own. And I could see what worked and I could see what didn't work. And I failed miserably a lot of stuff, and I was miserable on a lot of things. And it was a struggle, but I didn't and I wonder if this was a design by my soul sometimes. And there are days when I have words, but I heard the angel voices. I heard the voices. I heard the intuition voices, and they didn't lead me wrong. They always brought me to a place when I was in, if you could say you're in a place of despair or something. So it was my inner knowing and my inner, listening to my inner voice. I have this program that I teach, 5 languages of your soul, to get us back to listening to that inner voice. And our soul's not going to lead us wrong. Our soul our soul loves us, and our soul is that very gentle, loving voice that's connected in through intuition. And so how I did it was to learn to listen to my soul. And I'm not saying it was a constant battle. When I was younger, you do what parents, they do what I say, do what I tell you to do. We're the authority. And I knew they were half baked half the time. Some things that they were saying to me and asking me to do were just not, I could just feel it not working inside of me. So in that sense, I was very lucky. But on the other sense, I struggled.
I think you just hit a key point. Like I always say the intuition, for those who may not know to trust intuition, that may not have that developed muscle, that you feel it in like that mother's instinct, but it's a feeling. Like I've been working with a lot of people about, well, I feel this, I feel that, but they create labels like I'm anxious and that's a feeling. Anxious is a label and anxious is up here. And we have forgotten that I always say the body is like the speaker to the soul. When you listen to the body will tell you everything you need to know. It's just quieting the mind and getting out of the way. But we have forgotten that because we've been conditioned
Well,
in
absolutely.
society,
We're conditioned, we're so socialized, but we also know from, eons of living with, well, not eons, but with many thousands of years of living with dysfunctional families or dysfunctional religions, that we're not taught to listen to ourselves. We're taught to listen to our parents or listen to the authorities, whatever they religion, schools, priests, nuns, if you're in Catholic school or whatever, or just Catholic, public schools. Also, everybody has their list of, and I'm going to go a little bit further with this, has their list of what you need to do in order to be okay in life. And that comes from your unconscious self, all that parts of ourselves that have been just taking in all the lessons since we were tiny before we were even talked, and we created rules within ourselves. So this is why I think people have trouble with trusting their intuition, because they feel so strongly about something, but actually it's a rule that they developed when they were 2. And if they don't follow that rule, they react like a 2-year-old, like, oh, I'm going to die kind of thing. And so this is where healing and working with your soul's loving, it's quiet, it's positive. And so when you're feeling the intuition, trying to develop that intuition, knowing that you're going to a positive space, you're going to a sacred space, is very important for building your intuition and recognizing when the negative messages that come out so strongly in emotions are misleading you. I call it like our emotions are energy in motion, and they have messages for us. They're not telling us how to live. They're just saying, hey, listen, I got something I got to tell you. But lots of times we don't want to feel our feelings for lots of reasons. Sometimes our just emotions are big emotions, and I just don't have time for a big emotion today. But so our unconscious self reacts to keep the emotions down. So we'll have a reaction of anxiety or a reaction of negativity or do you ever have a friend or a family member who always leads with no matter what you say? What you say? No. Right. You want to go to Disney World? Well, no, but tell me more. So, and that's a protective defense mechanism. Right. It's really not that they don't want to go to Disney World. It's just like, I have to say no before I really get what's going on. Well, whatever reason. But what I'm trying to say is when we learn to manage and navigate through the reactions to our emotions, and we get down to the real emotion, and then we get the real message, then we're in charge. Then we're aware, and then we know what to do.
So the one thing, so I got 2 questions for you. One, I feel like, so what do you see to be the biggest challenge of people accessing that and being able, the second part would be, how do they differentiate the part of that whisper? Like we even hear this like with mediumship too, right? It's similar thing of differentiating what's coming from your head versus what's coming from that soul. And so, or like in this case, it's like the conditioning, that voice of conditioning, that patriarchal voice, that societal conditioning. Maybe it's old wounds, old traumas that are running like an operating system.
Could be your matriarch.
And being able to, right, and being able to, how do you know like that's it versus your soul? Because I see this dynamic play out a lot.
Yeah, this is where I've been working on that and trying to make it into something that actually you could make a system out of it, or you could understand it. And I call it the 5 languages of your soul. but the first step in any kind of connection to your higher power is loving yourself and knowing when you're in a place of well-being and knowing when you're outside of a place of well-being. And from that place, living, and okay, I don't want you to lose me on this, what I'm saying the word gratitude, but don't lose me here. When we realize what makes us feel good, like when I start the morning slow with a cup of tea, and then I need to listen to a meditation, I feel my best. But when I jump out of bed and I just run in to do this, that, or the other thing, I don't feel my best. So I'm going to make note of that and what makes me feel best and what sets me off. I will write it down. So, have a list. I like people to have a list of 30 things that make you feel good. Like warm socks make me feel so good. I can't even tell you why. And then, I know why, exactly why, but we don't go there. Or, like I said, the cup of tea or quiet music, or sometimes I need really loud music. But I really pay attention to my well-being inside, and I'm not talking myself in or out of it. It's a loving, accepting voice, and I keep them tiny, not huge trips to Hawaii, just tiny. And when I begin, and everyone can do this, when you begin to build that dialogue with yourself, you start to trust yourself. You start to get, oh, I know that feeling. That's not a good feeling. Oh, I know that feeling. And then you tell your mind, you're programming or reprogramming your mind, find more of this because it makes me feel good. It's not a narcissistic thing. It's a self-care thing. There's a big difference. I feel like a narcissist, from my observation, I don't know if I'm a narcissist, I don't think I am, will go for something that they can control or they can influence, and they're not interested in really, they're not interested in well-being. They're interested in something else, but they're also not interested in another person's well-being. So
They're
really getting
usually interested in control.
yeah. So if you feel like you're controlling something, let it go. You're not in your power. You're not connected to your soul, because your soul has a whole different modality, has a whole different feeling
There's a
from it.
lot of surrender involved. There's a lot of surrender and deep, I call it deep remembering and deep listening, right? So it's,
Yeah. And it could start simple, because sometimes people go deep. What do you mean deep? You say, just
yeah,
where are you happy? And then build on that. And then as you train your brain to go find more of that, your brain will start to recognize meditation feels good, or why don't we call this person, or our thoughts will occur to us that hadn't occurred to us before, but we're training our brain through feeling good and being grateful. Isn't this amazing that I have a drawer full of warm socks? I just look at my sock drawer. I mean, simple things like that. And then once we have this trust, then we start to hear our soul's voice. Because connecting in with source, I have been observing that it's kind of equal to how much we love ourselves, how much we understand ourselves, how much we're willing to take care of ourselves. And that's how much we sense spirit and the love of source, of God coming towards us, because we block it, because we think we have to do everything on our own. And as we're realizing that there are things in life that nurture us and we're going for them, we can start to feel that soul language. We could start to feel source. When we're wrapped up in negativity and life sucks and then you die kind of thinking, that's what we're going to get.
it's reaffirming, right? I mean, I know, like for me, when I first started my journey, trying to embrace gratitude was extraordinarily hard for me because I mean, I know my story, but just for viewers, I mean, here I was leaving a domestic violence relationship only to be persecuted by the very system that was supposed to be
Oh,
protecting me and my children.
yeah.
And then when I was speaking out, demanding justice and demanding, for my children to be safe and for me to be safe and for the abuse to stop, I was punished and incarcerated. It was my right to a lawyer denied. And I haven't seen my children in 12 years. And I would sit there and be like, well, what the F would I be grateful for? Look at my life. Look, I mean, I know there's probably people here listening. That's why I'm sharing this. It's like, well, what the hell is she talking about gratitude? Like my life sucks. I just got laid off, right? Or my pet just died, or my spouse we just got divorced, and like all these upheavals. And one of the things that I had to learn is it's gratitude with no attachment, which is hard to do. But when you start doing little by little, you're right. Like it's the little by little. And some of it might require unpacking, right? I mean, because you have to unpack your anger, you have to unpack your fear, you have to unpack your worry.
Yeah.
And what are those really stemming from? So you can create space to allow the things and take back charge of your life, but you can only take charge. It's like this dichotomy, right? It's like you're actually more in power when you surrender. Like I just know as a trauma survivor, it was like a really weird concept. Like, well, I got to protect myself. I got to be safe. I can't let anybody in. But yet, the mere fact of surrendering to spirit or surrendering to the soul, you're actually more in power
Well,
than
that's,
trying to control
yeah.
it.
And it's counter. Well, we have our life intuition that is from our gut reaction that says this person is bad, or when you behave like this. I'm a huge people pleaser because that's how I survive in my world, and but it takes me down some dark paths. So I have where was I going there? You said something really important. What we're talking about in gratitude is that knee-jerk reaction. What am I grateful for? I got nothing. Wait a minute. Hold on a minute. You breathe. I remember I went through something with the divorce and like my kids and the custody and all that was ridiculous. Um, and I was actually told by the court systems that I had to cease and desist and never talk about my experience or I'd be thrown in jail. And it was pretty intense. Massachusetts can be a very intense state. In any event, I felt like I can't talk, I can't speak, I can't do it. And I really prayed.
And that's just, I don't mean to interrupt, but just for clarity, like, because they're probably going to have survivors here. That in itself seeds in the body, and it's like now it doesn't have an outlet to
Yeah.
release, right? So
So what happened for me, and this is where the Akashic realm to me is, which I mean, and it's we're going from personal to impersonal, and this is where we struggle when we need something personal. I was saying I couldn't sleep. I had in 3 months I had gotten maybe an hour sleep a night because this thing was so intense in my life. And I was praying the rosary because that's what I was taught to do, and it always put me to sleep. So I said, I'm going to just do this repetitive prayer. And as I did this, I went into this at one night. I went into this like zone, and I had this vision where the Sacred Mother came to me, since you were calling me, here I am, and she said to me, "I don't know what you need because you're not telling me how you feel." And I had been told so many times, "Don't say, don't say, don't say." So it's like this in the vision. These beautiful, loving hands went into my solar plexus, and all the words that were bundled up inside of me came out as a prayer, and I felt so much better. So it broke a myth and it broke a rule that spirit wants to hear your pain. And she says, I don't know how to get in. I don't know how to help you if you don't tell me where you are. So I didn't go, I learned to pray, not to complain, but to say, oh, Holy Mother, I am so lost. I am so confused about these different things that are being told to me, this and that, and I don't even know how to breathe. And I eventually, she gave me some teachings after that, but the main teaching was how to pray, which is to just be who you are, honestly who you are, and to wake up every morning or to spend the day breathing. Sometimes the only thing you got is the sun comes up, it could rain or not, and you can breathe. Sometimes that's you only have that, and to breathe with your breath, just breathe in spirit, breathe out and relax into spirit, and that's you. There's nobody else. That's just your space, and from taking care of yourself like that, you begin to sort out what the bullshit is and where you start and where you end and where the bullshit starts and where it ends. And you stay with you, not with your pain self, not with your complaining self, not with your despair self, but with that part of yourself that's still breathing. That's how that's how basic I had to go at that point. And so I just kept breathing. And I remember people saying to me, I would
well,
kind of,
it's that part that's outside the story.
exactly. You want to get outside the story and know that you are not the story. The story stinks. The story is this. The story is that. You're
And
not.
it doesn't negate having to deal with the story, by the way. I just want to be clear for our listeners. It's like it doesn't negate that you don't have to negate. It doesn't mean or deal with it. It just means that you are separate from your story. Your
And you're
story is still a
centering.
story.
Story's still a story. You still have your work to do. And isn't it easier to know, for instance, washing the car is filthy. It's been through all kinds of mud. And you're looking, oh my God, that's cars. And your car's your identity and all that. You just put all that aside and say, the car is dirty. I need to wash the car. And that's it. And then
There's
you
no
make,
attachments.
yeah. And so then you can make a game out of it. Or then all of a sudden it's like, I can't believe that. Where'd this mud come from? You can start to, you want to make a new story. You want to make a new story, not have the story tell you. You want to tell your own story, but you got to take care of your business for you to change the story.
I think for me, I remember what helped too is past life regressions, and trying to understand and this was my belief, whether past lives are real or not wasn't what I was looking at. Okay, just for those who might be naysayers, but sometimes in those stories you can learn things.
Absolutely.
And I found an interesting pattern. The more I dove into it, the more I realized I either lost children, or I died giving birth to children, or I never had children.
Okay.
And in this case, my ex was my brother in a past life who sexually assaulted me. And when he went to sexually assault my younger sister in that life, um, in trying to get him off of her, we killed him in self defense. And so what I saw is that it kind of gave, it's kind of hard to put into words. It was like it gave me breathing space to see that, wow, this is something that's on a soul level that I have to, like, so one of the things I've been working on is working on that soul level. So this doesn't repeat again in another life. If there is such thing as another life, right? That it doesn't repeat in that life. That how do I heal that? How do I break that soul contract of repeating this pattern?
I hear you. I think that, and you can also, and I feel like, because we forget about this in past lives, you can go to a lifetime where you did not have that. And how did you feel? And what was life like? So that you can bring back, as a quantum exchange kind of thing, you can bring back that feeling, bring back that experience of life and say, this is what I want to vibrate to. This is where I want to be.
Do you know what's funny? I just recently did that. And it was the first time I actually have no memory of what that was.
I
I
love
was like, one time I'm like, yes, we're gonna do this. And I actually I remember being woken up a couple times with voices, and I did it with a friend of mine, and she even said, she's like, yeah, there was a spirit around you. And I go, yeah, I felt like I must have gone out of body because like I woke up and then I was like, oh my God, did I like, where did I go? Like, what happened? I don't remember anything that was said. I don't remember anything of where I went or who I
you.
was.
How did you
And it
feel?
was fascinating. Like, I was like, out of the one time I was trying to do that one thing you're saying, I have no memory.
How did you feel? Did you feel calm? Did you feel I've got nothing? Or did you have a sense of,
Well, I felt so I knew, and I was trying to figure out whether or not it was me out of body calling to me or if it was a spirit guide outside of me. I somehow, my soul detached from my body.
oh,
And so 3 times I was like, almost like when you like nod and you go like this and you kind of like jerk. So there was like some sort of jerk reaction where all of a sudden I was back in my body and I was like, what happened?
it's like you went to heaven. Sounds like you went to a beautiful, beautiful place. And
Well, it was fascinating because like it happened 3 times because I was like, wow. And but it was like it definitely I felt I was trying to figure out, I'm trying to find like the words to describe what I felt because a part of me feels like I was hit by a freight train, but it didn't feel like a freight train because it was more like, oh, this just did this, but it wasn't strenuous. It was,
yeah,
I can't find the right words to describe it. It was like, wow, what just happened?
you know, it's time exists linearly for us here on the earth plane, but all
Right.
of these lifetimes, all of these experiences, like imagine that a friend of mine described it like this. It makes it's a wild idea. It's like a bubble. Time is a bubble around us. We could just reach out and pluck something from the time bubble to get what we need. So my gut feeling of what, and if anybody else had this experience, is you're learning the language of that peacefulness. You're learning the language of that love, that without, and so you got 3 different huge downloads that just need now, through meditation, through calm thinking, to be unpacked, so that your mind can begin, and your heart, unpack it in your heart and have that feeling, so that your mind can begin, because you're asking your mind to go someplace really huge, and your mind's been struggling to survive. I'm just talking to whether it's you're beyond this, or if somebody else is in it.
But
And
it's a truth, because here's what I say, Nancy. Whether you're in a pile of crap, going out of a pile of crap, or in a pile of crap, it's all how we deal with it. And my stance has always been, I don't care what level of expertise anybody is, we are all still human.
yeah,
And
yeah,
we all sometimes even regress, and sometimes we fall backwards, and then we wonder. And that is part of the life lessons that we learn as human beings in this life thing called life, right?
right. And there's lots of parallel or realities, and there's lots of pathways and rabbit holes we can go on to, and it's vibration, and there's a lot of little radio stations of vibration that we could go and work on. But to me, it's with the Akashic Records, it's going back to source, and the source has, in the Akashic realm, has the umbrella of everything, every rabbit hole, every parallel existence, every coulda, shoulda, every, and but it brings it into wholeness. It brings it into balance through love and through unconditional love. And if we continue to go back to source, however we get there, so some through meditation, some through going for a long walk, or writing poetry, or some through just, I'm going to zone out for a little bit, and then you'll come back knowing something, is just continue to fuel yourself with that grace. It's things in this life don't make sense. I don't know of anything that actually makes sense here, except to create an experience where I get the sense from it, because the soul always knows what to do, knows what's going on, and knows, if there needs to be something to bring it into balance, or a remedy, the soul has it. So we go back to source and the soul, or soul and the source, whatever order you're doing it in. You'll come back with some energy that will help unpack what you're trying to recreate in your life. So if you're moving, there's this, the triangle of drama. It's like at one end there's the fixer, and then the other bottom point there's the victim, and then the other bottom point is the victimizer. And when we're in the drama triangle, we play each one of those roles 100%. You could feel like you're always the victim, but if you do some deep inner work, you'll see, oh, there was a victimizer over here. Oh, I'm going to jump right over to the fixer. The fixers turn into the victimizers really quick.
Yeah,
and so, but then there is, in the tree of life, the Kabbalah, there's the sacred triangle, which is sacred mother, sacred father, sacred child. So in life, when we're trying to move out, and this is where the Akashic realm, I think, is so helpful, and all the guides in there, when we move out of the drama triangle into the sacred triangle, the language of the drama triangle changes to the sacred language. And the sacred language, sacred mother, sacred father, you're no longer aligning with dad here, who was human, or mom here, who was human. We're going to that sacred masculine feminine that created that divine child. And so we start to have a different language within ourselves. And that's the language of well-being to me. I mean,
I have so I play on something similar. And so whether I call it victim, victimizer, whatever it might be, ego.
Yeah.
I always say you're either in that mode or are you in soul mode, because the energy feels different. There's no attack. When you're in soul mode, there's a level of spaciousness involved.
Oh.
So I do a lot of work around helping people turn triggers into a power using those dynamics. Beautiful. Because I find, like, if you're in soul mode, then if you know your soul is protecting, if you know your soul is who you are, and you understand the vibrational, like the physiology behind soul. It's funny, like when I used to teach anatomy and physiology, I was always fascinated, like, how come we teach all these different body systems, but we don't teach the electrical conduction system as a body system? Because The
Right.
electrical conduction system is actually the soul piece. But
Exactly.
our in my opinion, it is, because the soul is the light. But what generates the electrical impulse in the heart? What generates the electrical impulse in the brain? Our ability to see, our ability to touch, our ability to taste, our ability to digest and have a crap. Okay. All of that stuff is all done through an electrical stimulus. Where does that come from? And that's the $1 million question that I used to always say. I'm like, but that's the soul particle.
The life force energy. Where is life force energy actually from? I
You
think I
know?
do something similar with, but a totally different point of view, but they all are the same thing.
Yeah.
Integration is what I call it. The soul's here to have an experience. And so the soul designed this physical body with all of its foibles and all of its strengths and all of its emotional reactions, and then designs a situation that will bring up a dynamic that will force us to learn or have to go in a certain direction to learn what the soul wants to experience and what it wants to learn. So, having said that, the soul can feel like a total mortal enemy sometimes. But when we look at how we feel and how we're reacting, what our belief systems are, what our inner players, when we meditate and talk to them, they move to a higher level. They move to a soul level. They integrate and they expand. That's what I feel is ascension. So you can take those frustrating parts of yourself and you can bring them into the law of vibration, take them into sacred place with the higher law of vibration, and you can, okay, tell me what you're thinking. This anger, this brand of anger, frustration, I'm just going to pound his head. Talk to me. And in sacred space, just love it and accept it. And the vibration of sacred space will introduce that energy of going to a higher level, and it'll change.
And
And
I just want to add to that, that for those who may have been sexually assaulted or has some sort of acts of violence, this in no way, shape, or form is saying that your soul, you deserve that.
oh,
It,
I thank you for
so
repeating that. I understand that.
so it's just saying that it is something, because like for me it was, I wouldn't be as good as I am doing the trauma work if I didn't go through all those things. I
Respect.
wouldn't be able to testify on behalf of other survivors if I didn't go through what I went through.
Deserve to go. It went too far. As far as this, is how I say it. You had a plan. It went too far. Okay, we're out of control here. Let's bring it back to humanity. Let's bring it back to health and well-being, and the work that you're doing with people who have it, experienced extreme abuse and loss of themselves, loss of their soul. Bringing your soul back to yourself is the healing, and your soul didn't necessarily choose for you to have it, but people go too far in their illness, in their mental illness, and how they have pain and how they feel that they need to take that pain on to somebody else. And you might be born into a family that wants to bring that family into wholeness and healing, and that family's not balanced, and you're just taking it off the head. It's not okay. And going back to that soul retrieval, going back to that finding who you are, you become a person who doesn't necessarily have to go back into the struggle and hit back, but I'm not part of this anymore. It's
Yeah.
bullshit. I'm out of here. And that's soul work.
And
I'm
some
out
of
of
it
here.
could be you're breaking the pattern and you're breaking the cycle. And what I say is, you know what, maybe you didn't break the cycle in this life, but maybe you're breaking the cycle in future or future generations and all those other things. So again,
Yes.
it's going outside the initial story, which sometimes is hard to do when, if you've gone through a really horrible experience, you know.
Well,
So, you know,
but you do.
like my mother's fear was drowning. He had a
Oh,
fear of deep water. And then we found out, my father actually did the past life regression on her to find out that she was a ship captain in Maine and there was a mutiny and they forced her to walk the plank and she drowned.
oh, how horrible.
So it was like, okay, so she had to somehow rebuild this relationship with water and feel safe being in water, you
Yeah.
know?
And that's the reclaiming. That's the admitting this is how I feel. I'm embracing how I feel. This is, you may say, I don't want to experience this anymore. However, you have to embrace how you feel. You have to feel your feelings, feel it to heal it. And with your help of your soul or a person here right next to you that might be able to help you therapize it and move towards integrating that experience so it's no longer leading you around by the nose. And like you said beautifully, Laura, you have went through a lot so that you could talk to other people who are going through that, to not so they could relive it over and over again, so that they could live a better life, go beyond it. It's not
I
who you were. You didn't deserve that.
I always said when it came time when I was going through it, there was nobody qualified to help me do. Now there's a lot of people that do similar things, but back then, 15, 20 years ago, there really wasn't anybody that did that kind of work.
Mhm.
So there was a lot of self work. And at least what I can say is hopefully we can cut down the time frames where it's not going to take somebody 20 years to do what it took me 20
Hope
years to do,
so.
right?
I think I'm with you.
So but the soul, honestly, Nancy, like this is something, whether you're just going through a hard time or whether you're just curious about working with your soul, or whether or not you're just struggling to find how do you reclaim parts of yourself that was gone or taken or stolen from you or your ancestors. The soul piece was a game changer for me because it opened up things beyond my limited vision, and it allowed me to pierce through things because I wasn't stuck in the hamster wheel of my story.
That's beautiful. I love that. That's beautiful. Because that hamster wheel of your story is not taking you to the higher place. It's not helping you to learn and grow and get past it. However, I've been stuck in a lot. I can have 5 or 6 hamster wheels going at any given time.
Right?
And I'm like, what is this squeaking all about? And then just settling down and knowing that um this too has meaning, not the meaning that I think it has, but as I move through it and past it, it doesn't own me anymore. It's the energy has now opened up from a stuck cycle, which is a hamster wheel, to now I'm going to source from heaven, and then I'm going into Mother Earth's healing, nurturing energy for resources in my earth plane, and I'm now moving forward. I remember um, you said something that got me going. I was talking at the time that I was going through, my thing with divorce and kids and stuff, and I remember talking to a therapist. This happened, and then this happened, and then this happened, and it's like, oh my gosh! And she says, "You're now past what I know." Just, but I'll support you. But I'm like, how can I be past what you know? You don't have an answer. And then I realized, right that was my 30s, people don't have answers. Where are the answers? So that was another driving force. Well, where are the answers for this? This is just not a way to live. And I remember going into my one of my past lives, and I went into I guess there's this lifetime in between lifetimes you can go into, and I went in through the most recent life I had, and then I went into the war room of creating the lifetime I was having now, and I saw what they were talking about, what they're doing, and I stood there and I yelled at them all. I said, "What are you, crazy?" I said, "No person can do this. This I don't see where you're bringing in the compassion, the love, and the support here." So I rewrote. I didn't know if I was supposed to do that or not, but I just got mad, and so I did it. So I took some things out and added some other things. I said, "No, we're not going to do this like this anymore. This is no." I I actually that's what I call soul contract clearing. I said, I want to live my life much differently than so I brought in more compassion. I brought in more tenderness. I brought in more self-forgiving, because I do know that women and men who have been badly abused since childhood carry a heavy load of self-recrimination and shame and blame and things like that. Those are all soul contracts that can be cleared gently and lovingly with the help of the angels, with the help of your soul, so that you could experience your life from a higher level, another point of view.
And I just want to add to that, this does not mean turn it over and they do it for you, because that's what we call spiritual bypassing. It's having them hold you while you do the work. because that's the differential, because I see a lot of people, especially sometimes in the new age community, where it's like, oh, just turn it over, let them do it for you.
Not gonna
And
do
then
it.
we forget that it's like, no, that's part of what we came here to learn and do. And it's
Yeah, I agree. They
all
were
of that.
going back to that Mother Mary coming in and say, I don't know what you're going through unless you tell me. You got
Right.
to tell me. And I was so surprised. I said, well, you're benevolent. How come you don't know everything I'm going through? No, you got to tell me. But we can't do spiritual bypass. Because we'll only end up taking it to heaven with us, and then we'll have to. That's what creates next lifetime. So how about let's get it done this lifetime as best you can.
So on that note, what would people that might be curious as to learning, like what would be some of the steps that somebody can do to just maybe tap into their soul more? What are some tips that people could do today to start doing that?
Well, I kind of wrote something up for some of my buds who are just kind of going through struggles with groups of people. Um, and I call it the stress to happiness transformation. And I kind of put it around how you feel about yourself as a result of interacting with lots of different people. It could be coworkers, could be family, could be friends, could be you pick the same friends over and over again, or it could, I mean, any number of things, or it could be just you doing you to you. We have so what I step one, and you find yourself in this hamster wheel that we just talked about. So step one is acknowledging your emotions. And it's important to accept and make peace with your own unhappiness. Love your own happiness. This is a springboard towards your own happiness is comes from your unhappiness. Okay. Because you don't have what you want. You don't have what you need. So making your feelings give them a seat at the table. And because when we mask your feelings with false bravado, you won't heal your heart. So talk with your emotions and listen to their message. You got to sometimes sort through all the reactions, the gatekeepers that say, "Don't go there. You're being too sensitive," or whatever the gatekeepers say from keeping you from feeling how you really feel, and then get to their messages. Um, and sometimes the messages are very healing. Um, I'm going to make it up example. This person that you're struggling with is very much like the overwhelming mother that you used to have, and you're trying too hard with her. And did your mother change? No. So, that kind of thing. You could accept that this is the emotions can really tell you some very profound things once you get to that energy and motion that's talking to you. And these emotions
The
are looking.
emotions, I always say, are the GPS to what you really want.
Exactly. They're looking to be heard, to felt, and they're looking to be loved because they're you and you need to love yourself. So emotions are simply telling you about you and they are not leading your reality. That's up to you to create. You're in charge. So after that first step, go into sacred, I call sacred space, which is about breathing and embracing your spirit. So you're breathing and you're loving this emotion that looks like crap to you and you're loving it and you're bringing in your soul, bringing in your higher power and just relaxing. And this is where the magic happens. You breathe in peace, you breathe in calm, you breathe in love. And if you can breathe in forgiveness, sometimes you can't, just breathe in spirit. And then visualize all of you, all your bad feelings, and use yourself and you're shaking in your shoes of being lovingly held and heard by spirit, by however you perceive source. And you're getting a big spiritual hug, all of you, warts and all. And as you exhale, breathe. That's what you're breathing in spirit. Then breathe out and visualize all the coldness, the numbness, the gloom um, that's being expelled from your being. You're just breathing it out because those are reactions. The coldness, the numbness, those are reactions to the emotion. So you're breathing them out and you're letting your emotion flower out to its highest potential, which is it just wants to love you and it just wants to be loved. So that's step two. So then step three, now after you have really kind of in step two, kind of come to a place of peace and grace within yourself, because you're working through these heavy duty emotions by loving them and having spirit, soul come in and support you. Now you're going to impact the group. And in the social settings, be present to yourself as best you can. You're perfect just the way you are. And hold your inner warmth and spirit in your heart and your aura and let it build slowly out from your heart into your aura and then let your aura just go where it's going to go And with each breath in, you're building up this place of well-being as you need it to be, not as some book says, as you need it to be. And with each breath out, you're going to expand that seed of love into your environment without even trying. It just goes out and watch it grow, subtly impacting the people around you. You're not saying a word. You're simply being with yourself. And if you can leave the situation, leave it. If you can't leave its situation, be present with yourself and how you're really feeling, and use spirit to support you and expand yourself. So you might wonder if these breathing exercises can affect your happiness in the environment you exist in. And studies do show that this does work. And so that's what, when somebody says ground yourself, this is my grounding formula. It will come
Yeah.
home to you, and that you're not alone and that you're loved. Even if you're seen as the worst person in the world and you're holding the bag of shame, loving yourself and loving that shame, it changes, it transforms. And whatever anybody says, you could just say, "Oh, look where they're coming from." Don Miguel Luis always says, "Don't take it personal. They're in their own struggle. They're in their own world. They don't even see you." So, and so the interaction that you have with the people based from being in that present moment, you're actually giving other people permission to be in that loving place with themselves. And you'll see things shift over time. You'll also find yourself able to leave certain situations that aren't right for you.
Yeah, it's a big, it's a shift in perspective and perception and a way of being. So I got a question for you. What would what would you say moving into 2024, like why would somebody want to learn about Akashic Records, especially moving into 2024? What would be the number one reason to do so?
Well, I feel the number one reason, 2024, every year we're here to learn and grow a little more, a little more. And I feel like somehow, I don't know if anybody is noticing this. This is Mercury retrograde because my focus is going in and out. But
My light keeps going in and out, so
so definitely something's going on. But we're in a place in humanity, and I think we're always there. But for some reason, the bar's been raised for us to really get to that place. 2024, I think, offers a lot of different challenges to be the best person that we could be in probably difficult situation, difficult scenarios. So good being in your Akashic records helps you to know where your soul has come from, where it's going. You're not alone. You are loved and you are empowered, and you keep fueling yourself with that Akashic energy from the Akashic realm. You're going to a new gas station and you're filling your car, you're filling yourself up with high power fuel that's going to help you know, I'm not going down this road, I'm going down this road. In order to shift, he there's a lot of changes that need to be, everyone knows this, is no one's arguing this, but there's a lot of changes that need to be made in our societies across all the whole world, across all humanity, but we're not gonna make those changes if we do it the same old, same old. But if we are willing to step into our soul's power and understand who we are and what our gifts are, and we're able to bring those gifts forward in a very clear, precise way, and we're not gonna get knocked off our for who we are because we're strong within ourselves, our creativity will go through the roof. And if we,
not, not only that, I always just say like when we're in the way in the part of ourself where our soul came here to be, all
uh,
we have to do is how do we fit into the larger puzzle?
yeah,
How do we fit into like what's our role in the larger puzzle versus what I want? And this is what, coming from that place, I think there's a whole shift because we're seeing all that me entitlement, and we're seeing where that's getting people, and it's not getting people very far.
no, it's not. And we all could see that, but we're all not sure how to do this. How many times can you go out and vote and change your government? I mean, everyone's trying to. It's such a symbolic or allegorical situation of the whole argument around voting. If you look at it in terms from the Akashic records and what the meaning of that is, so
Speak about that if you can, if you just because people would be curious, especially going into election year.
well, we vote, every single minute of our lives. We take a stand on how we're aligned with a higher power, how we're aligned with the natural laws, how we're aligned. And sometimes when somebody gives you, you want this or you want this, and you look at it, I don't want either one of them. And so stepping out, being willing to say something, I'm not up for that. Or if you're attached to a certain outcome, why am I attached to this outcome? What do I need to happen in here that I can't let have it happen? I can't create it in my life. And what am I signed up for, and what do I not want to sign up for? And this is a place of, I think, this year coming into of clarity, seeing things for what they are, the emperor's clothes and all that. You know the story of the emperor's clothes.
Mhm.
The emperor's walking around with no clothes, but everyone's afraid to say what's really happening till the little kid who is not attached to anything says he's got nothing on, guys. And I feel like we need to be that innocence to say it ain't happening here and it ain't happening here. And so we're
And not vote from a place of fear.
exactly. Don't vote for what you don't want, vote for what you want. And I feel,
I always said elections would be, I imagine how elections would be so different if people voted from that place versus fear, or like you're trying to master a chess game,
yeah.
and just do you and let everybody else do them and let the cards fall where they may. I mean,
Well,
that's just all we can do.
yeah, I think what's on the table this year is illusion. I really do. And wanting to have somebody else fix it for us. And each individual person, remember the world changes on one person speaking up. Like think of all of the amazing people who have just lived from their hearts and have brought awareness into humanity. It wouldn't have happened. It wasn't a group concession. Everyone's going to say, let's go, let's do this, let's do that, let's do this. It was one person saying, like the little kid in the emperor's clothes, this is what this is right here. Look at how beautiful it is. Or, and I'm not going to, go over here with that one. I feel like we can't really see clearly until we embrace our own selves and where we are, and we start to fuel ourselves from that higher power and walk in with a natural flow. We have a lot of in our in the whole world. I need we went through this whole materialistic age, and I'm like right there with you. The shiny things that we have to have or we can't survive. And I think those shiny things are getting in the way of us knowing how to live. And and it's
I think we're starting to learn though. I think we're trying to figure it out. I mean, we started some of it with the pandemic. I mean, even people started doing more homeschooling or growing
absolutely,
gardens and growing their own food again, or
yeah.
even just getting chickens, all those different things. It's just, and I've always said this, if you don't know what to do, get out of the way because your soul knows better than you.
Amen. Right, right. And so if you don't know what to do and you're standing in the grocery store, you could say to your soul, which I have done many, many times in the grocery store, take me to the aisle that I won't cry. Take me to the aisle that I can get the food that will nurture me, that I'll feel good about. And I close my eyes, take a couple deep breaths in, and I go into the store and just say, and I use my connection with my soul and my intuition to show me what foods. Like I want the chocolate covered cookies, but those aren't what's good for me. Um, but I do need to find, they say the outside of the store is where you want to go grocery shopping anyways. You don't want to go into the inner aisles, but I don't want to go down that road just now. But what I want to go, and if you have a relationship with yourself, your body, how your body really feels, what your soul is really, the spirit, the flowing with the natural flow of life, then you will make choices.
Well, food is energy though. So if you're eating food that's chemically processed, or even with buying meat that is inhumanely processed, because again, that energy is transferred, we're consuming these toxins. So, like in the Jikun and Reiki tradition, one of the missions is to improve medical outcomes, but to also reduce medical waste. From the Institute's philosophy, that also means like when we consume something, it comes out the other end and it has to go somewhere. So if we're overly taking too many medications, Well, guess what? Those medications are going back into our food supply because it's going into the soil or it's going into the water and it's feeding the fish. I mean, it's just so it does play a role. So you're right, you know. So I had to go down that rabbit hole there for a second.
Well, that's what I went going back to what Spirit was saying to me is we vote every day. We vote through everything we do throughout the day.
Yeah.
When we go into like the grocery store, we're voting. When we go to the gas station, we're voting. When we make an appointment with somebody and we have certain discussions, I voted today to talk to you because I knew we would have a wonderful conversation. Do you see what I mean?
Or if we decide we have a choice of buy something on Amazon or go support your local small business or pop-up shop, you're voting because you're choosing which to buy from, right?
Well, yeah, and you're empowering those people. Like I went to a pop-up shop. Didn't even know I was going to be there. It just was an accident that I got to this place. And and I walked in and it's literally mom and pop. I mean, and they had all these herbs that they were making and delicious tasting things, and they're all fresh. And it turns out they sell all summer long. Every Saturday, they're 2 minutes from my house.
Oh my gosh.
And I drove 20 miles to go see them. And I was like, but then I was realizing if I support them, they'll bring me more. Do you see what I'm saying? They'll bring,
And that's medicine for the soul. So that's like when we support local, when we support folks that actually nourish us. And
yeah.
I think we have to get out of this. Like, you know, when we use our dollar, it's where are we putting it and how is it going to replenish,
I
you
have
know,
seen
and
for a
nurture.
long, long time. I went into the records around COVID time and in and out and in and out. It's difficult to do when you're looking at this stuff because there's a lot of emotion and you're buying. It's a lot. It's a lot to go into this. But what I was seeing was communities getting smaller. As opposed to we have a huge community. If you think of the national grid, whatever the electrical grid,
Mhm.
our electricity is coming, or gas, and our gas is coming from another state, bazillions of miles away, whatever that is. So I had this in this meditation, and I was working it. This is idealistic. It's not a prediction of the communities, the electrical and the energies being local. So you the communities are not isolating themselves from each other, but you can't take out if communities are in little pods everywhere, one pod may collapse, but all the other pods can support it. But
Well,
if you
Hingham just did that. It was last year or the year before. They bought out the electrical company, so they own their own electrical company now.
and they're creating their own energy, and I saw that when I heard that, and MIT is doing it. Their whole
Mm.
campus is becoming a pod. And I'm saying that word, nobody else uses it. I don't know what they call it, but so I that was the image that I got after working in the records, and I'm telling you, it's not easy because you're getting out of the world you're living in now and stepping into a whole nother world, and it gets a little mind wacky. But I feel that we need and we can still support. We have the internet and we have work like your way that miles from me, and people listening to us will be miles from us. This is still connecting people. What we're doing is still connecting, and I don't want to take that away. But I do want to say is that because we are stretched the way we are, we've become very vulnerable as a community. And then when they talk about the hackers coming in and they're hacking this,
But I also find that's very American because when I've gone to other countries, we lack what I see as real community until you go to another country.
you know, I hear you. I hear you.
And we have to remember that. But that was also was conditioned because you know, it goes down to even like the invention of wash machines. Women used to commune and support each other, washing their clothes together. And then they invented the wash machine, which, yeah, made it more convenient. But now we're at home and we're isolated instead of communing together.
well, yeah, I was reading the same thing with this Native American. This article I read, and I said, "Oh my God, this is so true." They're a poor community, and somehow they came into a lot of money. And they said, "What do you want?" I said, "We want television sets. We want electricity." And so they also used to meet and have their story time. And there's a central location that they went to, and everyone stopped going. They just stayed and watched their TVs, and they didn't bring the community together again, and I see that.
But I
So I
do see it growing. Like I've seen in recent years, like especially during COVID, like the people recognizing the need for community again.
I
And I think a lot of it's coming from the BIPOC community because I feel like the us white folk are the most that don't have community, you
it's
know. But from those that are immigrants, immigrant populations, and the BIPOC have because they need community to survive.
well,
And I think that's also something to be said.
I think there's a lot to be said with that. And do we need to create a situation in humanity where we have to survive, we have to start helping each other? I was really concerned, and I'm sure many people were, that COVID caused us to be even more isolated from each other. And
I'm seeing that.
I feel that we haven't recovered from that yet. And but I remember going through the divorce and all these years of working, and one of the things that I try to do, being a minister of spirituals church, is to create community. And do you know how hard that is? It's
I know from trying to do it with women's circles and domestic violence, it's
people,
like pulling teeth.
yeah, they don't know how to be together. And they can be very difficult and very, the fingers come out and very shaming, and then they want it's you have in a small structure all the bad stuff, and I'm like, how do we bring the good stuff out in this small structure? I don't know. It's gonna take time. It's gonna take a lot of time because we haven't been.
It is a lot of work. I mean, I just know from doing women's circles, it's tough. Even though we try to say, like, if you just keep coming every month, we're going to build a stronger community, and then people will come once, and then they'll come 6 months later, and I don't know if they just don't understand the medicine in that structure. Like, I think it's like, how do we? Because I keep saying to myself, how do we like how do we show people like this is the medicine?
I keep showing up is the only thing I got, because I don't. We're up against a societal norm of isolation. We've
No.
been taught to be, I have to take care of this myself. Everybody else is wrong. And
Well, individualism, a lot of hyper individualism in the US.
yeah, and there's been a trend in the if you read HR, people who I know are in HR, but there's a trend in the working place that you can't have a singular person. You have to have a group of people. And if one person takes over and just if the whatever the project is will suffer for it, but if they all come together and work together, the project will thrive. And and darn it, you go into there's always somebody that has to be the one and has to be da 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 da, and so the project doesn't thrive, and then people who are working so hard as a team fall apart. But when you have a team that really works, miracles happen. I mean, things are developed that are phenomenal, and that's we need to. I
Yeah.
feel like this year is about getting back to that, understanding how to work as teams.
Well, it'll be very interesting because I'm leading a trip to Ireland in May,
Oh,
a
fun.
pilgrimage. And so Spirit told me to start off virtually as prep work in February.
Oh, that makes
And so we're going to meet 6 times prior to the trip because so far nobody's in the same state that is registered. And so, and I just know like when you go on a trip and if you're with somebody with 10 strangers, it might be day 10 before you feel comfortable around them.
yeah,
But if we start, this is what the virtual becomes
the
a
beginning.
vehicle, right? Because now we can learn about the sites, we can learn about how to work with the sites. We start working communally through ritual and ceremonial practices. We get to know about each other, we get to support each other, we become friends. So we show up to Ireland as friends, not like strangers.
Oh, that is.
And so I'm hoping, because I'm trying to really cater it to having a really strong container because I know I could have the best itinerary there is going there, but I know the success and how we experience it, 50% comes down to the structure of the container.
I think that's amazing.
You
Take
know,
notes. Figure out what the process is, what worked, what didn't do, so you can repeat it.
well, I've learned from going into other people's stuff what has worked and what hasn't. So that's why we're going to start doing the work in February. We're going to start meeting in February.
Yes.
And, we've only got 3 spots left, to go, but It's because we're going to go there and we're going to go and we're going to unpack some things and we're going to have this magic, but we're going to these sites that like talk about talking to the ancestors of Queen Maeve. And at the time I'm like, I had no idea who the heck she was. And yet she's inviting me saying, yes, come. And I'm like, but I don't know if I can climb up this 11-foot 100 climb. I've got long COVID and like I'm out of breath and I don't think I can do this. And every time I said I couldn't, she was showing me signs. And I'm like, but this is what it's about. This is what it's about. It's having these difficulties. But if you had a support system, we can overcome them together. So that container and who shows up is very crucial because we can have our own individual soul journeys, but how do we fit into the larger puzzle, right?
I love that idea. My imagination's going wild on this. This is terrific. It all works out really well.
So how could, if somebody wanted to work with you or study with you, how would they find you? What's the best way to find you?
Well, angelscapes.net is my website. Facebook is Nancy of Angelscapes or Nancy Smith of Angelscapes, because Nancy Smith is a funny name to Google or to search. So Angelscapes, Nancy at Angelscapes. And I think those are probably the easiest ways. You can message me through Facebook. I'm on Instagram, although I don't understand Instagram all that well. So you could try through that. I'm certainly check it every day. And but my website has the funnest thing that I suggest that people do is because I offer a number of things that people don't necessarily understand what the heck I'm talking about. So you can go on my website, go enter book a session, and there is a free discovery session there. So you can talk to me for about 15, 20 minutes and talk about what you're trying to accomplish, what you want to learn, and see if I can help you with it and what program I could take you through. Another, if you want to dip your toes into the water without even talking to me, is Amazon has Divine Love Affair and Akashic Journey. I know we're talking about Amazon, but it's on Amazon. And it's the cover is behind me, but it's Divine Love Affair and Akashic Journey. And that pretty much goes through what I offer, or how I work with the Akashic Records. Some people find it a really good read, and some people go, this is huge." Even so, again, schedule that discovery session, or message me through Facebook, or just send me an email, and I'm around. I'm available. I'm not overbooked. Talk to me. I'm I'm here to I'm here to help people change the world. I can't change the world, but I'm here to help people be their best selves possible so they can realize how important they are in their community and that they are making a difference. That's my big mission.
Well, Nancy, it's been such a joy having you on. And for those, please make sure you like, subscribe. If you want to support our podcast, support our domestic violence initiatives, please consider becoming a Patreon member for as little as $5 a month to support our work. We have a lot of work to do in 2024, and so we definitely can use your support. But if nothing else, please like, comment, share, do all those good things. Until next time, we're signing off on Triggers and Spiritual Medicine. Have a great day, everybody.